Welcome in, race fans, to the first episode of 2023 of Inside ARCS. We're coming to you live here from the Inside ARCS studios and podcast. We had a great off-season of multiple series going on, both in recruitment and in just fun runs. But now it's time to get into our official series. We've got plenty coming up here on this episode, from A Squared to SNS, TNT, ARCS Extreme with the dirt and short tracks, as well as some special iRacing events coming up. Thank y'all for coming out. Give everything here a like, subscribe to the podcast, and help us out in any way you can. As we go through this year, we'll have special guests come on, from the owner, Ryan Pinnell, all the way through our driver lineups in every division and series. But without further ado, let's get started on the Inside ARCS podcast. To get us started, we're going to jump into our ARCS Extreme preview. This is our asphalt short track and then our short track dirt oval series. We currently only have our schedule up and ready for the super late model, so we're going to get a quick preview into that. As you can see here, we've got our schedule lined out, kicking off February 13th. February 13th. Some of the dates are a little wonky because of where I am located, but we've got our super late models kicking off. We've got a nice solid season here coming up, and with that, you're going to see that we kick things off at New Smyrna Speedway for the opener, and it's going to be a action-packed season throughout. We had fun with these cars, kind of mixing them around last year in the ARCS Extreme Series, both on dirt and on asphalt, kind of changing up the cars. But this year, super late models is where it's going to be on Monday nights. Super late models, fresh on ARCS Racing Networks. As you can see, as we go down the schedule here, we head over to Lanier, then out to North Wilkesboro, which is getting a lot of attention this year, both in the real world and in the sim world. We go to Myrtle Beach, South Boston, Irwindale, Oxford Plains, which if you don't like turning lefts, do not go to that track because it is just one big left turn. Lots of fun there, lots of interesting ways to get yourself in trouble. Then we head to the Coliseum there of Bristol Motor Speedway. Head out to Stafford, Martinsville, your flat and bump and run style track, which these super late models, as overpowered as they are, it's going to be tough on those rear tires. Going out to Thompson Speedway, Southern National, Richmond, Nashville Fairgrounds, IRP or Lucas Oil Raceway, and then we finish out with Five Flag Speedway for the finale in June. As we've gone through each of the seasons here with ARCS Extreme, it has been a up and down in the driver count category. Sometimes around 10 drivers, but we've also seen in the past, in the last few months of last season, that our numbers have jumped up into the mid-teens, into the 20s. So look out for this series as an up-and-comer for ARCS and all the series coming through, because this one is a great grassroots feeder type series that puts on a lot of impressive showings, and that's going to be on your Monday nights. Monday nights coming up here on ARCS. From there, like I said, we have our ARCS Extreme Dirt. That schedule has not been released yet, but it will start the day after on Tuesdays. That will be Tuesdays through the season. Same style schedule as the asphalt ARCS Extreme, but dirt, obviously, with theirs, they are finishing up their schedule as we get rolling. We're going to head next into a series that has already begun, and that is Thursday Night Thunder. Thursday Night Thunder is in its Season 6 as we get rocking and rolling here. They are already 4 races into their season. 4 races into their season as we get a quick look at what has happened so far. Thursday Night Thunder has kicked off with multiple races already. As you see, Juan Jimenez took the first two races of the season in standout fashion, both at Chicagoland and Nashville. Now, both of those are mile-and-a-half tracks, so kind of gives you an idea of where Juan is going to be really strong this year. But 2 wins heading out straight away. Perfect start to the season for him. Aiden Norman grabs the third race of the season at WWT at Gateway, and Seth Wansing grabbed the Iowa win this past week. TNT is one of those mainstays, and it's in the ARCA cars. You know, can't bump, can't beat on these cars because they are fragile. They do not like it. Those old style cup cars from the past. But TNT is one of our invite-only leagues, and you'll see as the season goes on that this schedule is a complete hodgepodge of tracks, from things you would see on a regular like Bristol and Daytona, all the way to the retired tracks or fantasy tracks that these cars would not normally run, like a Milwaukee Mile, Rockingham, Suzuka. You're going to see some craziness get going as we roll through the season. We're going to take a quick look into the standings here. You see that we have Aiden Norman is sitting on top of the standings right here with his 1 win. He's averaging a 5th place finish, which is great for him. He's got a 5-point lead over Jeff Noe. I think I said that right. We'll find out later. Dustin Painter is hitting there in third, about 11 points back. And then as we work down through some of our other drivers, you see Juan Jimenez has got his 2 wins, but he's only made 2 starts. So it's hurting him in a major way in that he has not been able to race the last 2 weeks through the TNT. TNT is one of ARC's mainstays, like I said before, and it is run every Thursday night for the foreseeable future. As you saw on the schedule, it is going to be an absolute barn burner. As we head next into our other standalone series. So this is a series that doesn't have any connections anywhere or any kind of feeders, but that will be the Saturday Night Showdown, or SNS as they call it. SNS heads into season 6 as well. As we get prepared to look at their schedule, they have currently only run 1 race. So they kicked off this past weekend, and their schedule has not been completed, but it is in stone right now, and I can read that out to you here in a moment. But as we get locked in and look at their standings from race number 1, actually, let's not even do that. Let's just look at what the results were from race number 1. There we go. All right, so race number 1 from SNS Saturday Night Showdown finished out like this. It was held at Rockingham. The trucks did not like this track. Multiple drivers saying this truck keeps bottoming out. I'm hitting everything underneath my truck on this track. It's causing me to shoot across the track when I get up to speed. But in the end, it came down to who was able to, 1, survive, and 2, thrive with the truck that was supplied to them. And yes, they bottomed out, and yes, it is a tough track to drive. Rockingham is not a smooth track by any means, and Cody Pennell came out on top with the win here in the opener for the SNS 2023 season. SNS is going to see a little bit of a different look to it this year. It had a change in leadership, but it's still going to be that same style. Trucks heading over different tracks and different avenues of race patterns, whether it's the mile-and-a-halfs, whether it's the like the road courses, the super speedways, the short tracks. There is going to be something for everyone as we go through. So I lied and said it was season 6. Season 6 is actually later this year, but season 5 has kicked off this season right here. Season 5 has kicked off, and I have their schedule pulled up here in front of me now as we look at everything that is going on. All right, so heading into SNS's schedule here. Okay, so you saw they kicked off at Rockingham. They will continue on this coming Saturday at Kentucky, and then into the Superspeedway of Daytona, straight over out to California, racing at Sonoma for their first road course of the year. Then they head to the short track of Bristol, mile and a half at Kansas, up to Pocono in Pennsylvania. Then they're back on their last road course of the season 5 season, the early year season. They head to the Daytona road course with the trucks. Then all out to Bristol Dirt. There's a weird 3 weeks in here. You go Pocono, Daytona road course, Bristol Dirt. Craziness. And then they head for the regular season finale, the playoff cut at Martinsville on April 15th. Then they head into the round of 10 with 2 tracks, a mile and a half of Chicagoland, and then Talladega. And then that cuts it down to the round of 5 for 2 races, one at North Wilkesboro. That'll be a beating and banging between those top 5, and the finale of season 5 will be at Homestead. We'll preview season 6 and the back half of the calendar when we get there. But for right now, that is your season 5 schedule for the Midwest Barbecue Saturday Night Showdown here with ARCS. Before we get into our next segment here, which is going to be our special events coming up, if you are interested in what ARCS does, both from a media standpoint or a racing standpoint here on iRacing, hit that link right there. Go to racearcs.com to get signed up to possibly join us, get into some of the races, both either in SNS and the Extreme World or into our feeder series. We would love to have you. If you're more in like the administrative role or just a fan, we will post our Discord link. You can search us with ARCS, and you can hop into our Discord through racearcs.com, I believe, and we'll get you all set up when it comes to that. Something that I believe everyone could be a part of here as ARCS continues to grow with all of our series and our special events and each of our feeders. So I want to thank you all again for listening in, and as we head into our next segment. Our next segment is our special events. Special events for ARCS coming up, okay? This weekend, the 10th, 11th, and 12th, part of the 12th of February, iRacing has every year put on the Bathurst 12 Hour out at Mount Panorama in Australia. It is an absolute barn burner of an event, a very tough track to maneuver around. Let me see here. We're going to pull it up as that's not what I wanted to do. The track alone is enough to make someone scream, as you see here. This track is no one's best friend, let's put it that way. Long straightaways, high speeds in the GT3 cars. ARCS has in recent history become a staple in the team divisions when it comes to these iRacing events. Just this past month in January, the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, ARCS took home 2 victories in 2 separate splits in 2 separate cars. An excellent showing for the 2023 season for ARCS. We look to continue that here with 1 to 2 teams racing in the Bathurst 12 Hour. As you can see, the track, a lot of turns, 23 turns A lot of hard angles, hills, as you see down through the Dipper and all these Quarry Corner, all these different elevation changes. You're going to see a ton of damage. You're going to see a ton of stress on the cars and the drivers as they try to navigate this track for 12 hours. We're hoping to have two teams kick off in this event if able. It does back up into some of our official series, but our endurance program has gotten off to a great start this year. As we continue into the year, we have some more events coming up. In March, we'll have the 12 hours at Sebring that we'll have a team at least one team at. In May, you have the Nürburgring 24-hour, which is a huge event for iRacing. They're later in the year, 6 hours at Watkins Glen, 24 hours at Spa. Then you have the Petit Le Mans for iRacing, the Fuji 8-hour, and a couple others as you get down into the winter months that are a little bit more singular, and we'll get to those as we get closer. But like I said, it's been a great start for the ARCS endurance program with 2 wins coming in the Daytona 24-hour race. So congratulations to those teams, and we'll be having those drivers on as we go through the year. The next piece of ARCS that we have not talked about is our feeder series. So back in January, ARCS had their first ever draft for A squared. A squared is you have to be drafted into it by team owners. There are 28 official full-time drivers that will race in A squared, and we're actually going to go through A squared first as we pull up their work as well. So A squared is going to be like I said, drafted in, and I'll have the rosters here in one moment. But you drafted in. It was a 4-round draft. Three of the drivers were full time. That gave you 21 plus your 7 owners, and then they had a draft for a part-time driver to come in as a possible replacement, or just someone that they want to develop as they go forward. And then paired with A squared is our ignition program, which is our Xfinity cars. They will race the same schedule pretty much as the Cup schedule, the A squared schedule. And every 12 races, there's going to be a reshuffling where the owners can decide to drop a driver, keep their team the same, select a driver from ignition, take their part-time driver, make them full-time, take a full-time, make them part-time. There's going to be a lot of shuffling, possibly, that could come up in the next 12 races. So the drivers have 12 races to get their stuff together, make it work. Otherwise, they could be moved out of those different teams. We are working on getting the rosters up for everyone, as you can see. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. We continue on. There we go. Now we're cooking with peanut oil. So, A squared had their draft, and this is what the team rosters look like. So, going into this week, we have the duels at Daytona. So on Sunday, our drivers will be heading down to Daytona. Two separate races. Top two that qualify will be on the front row, 1 and 2, inside outside, and then we will have 2 races to set the lineups. First race will set the inside line, second race sets the outside line. All drivers are available to run in this full-time, definitely, and all part-time drivers. They're allowed 2 races during this first 12 race stretch. You can see here, this is how A Squared team rosters line up. Beatron Racing, headed up by Jeremy Brault, has drafted Joshua Gaiman, Jack Mulkey, Steven Oberstadt, and John Smeal as their part-time drivers. Black Acid Racing, owned by James Kerr, will be joined by Austin Purnell, Matthew Leiter, Brian Rupert, and their part-time driver will be Tristan Catania. Bandit Racing is owned by Toby Estes. He selected Briley Wright, Tommy Reynolds, Cody Riggs, and Aiden Norman as his part-time driver. I believe Aiden Norman's going to be your dark horse possible coming out of the part-time ranks into full-time ranks, depending on scheduling and how he races. Presidential Racing, owned by ARCS owner Ryan Pinnell. He drafted Donald Ray, Kevin Feemster, Elrich George out of the Bahamas, and his part-time driver will be Jacob Blankenship, another driver that is possible scheduling that could enter into full-time status in the second 12 races. So keep an eye out for that. Sunday Money Racing, owned by Seth Wansing. He selected Bryn Roberts, Daniel Michelle, Jonathan Hohenbrink, and Cody Pinnell as his part-time. A stacked team, some definite risk-taking there in his draft, especially with Daniel. Daniel's going to be a rookie here in A Squared, but he won on a team that I actually raced with, or that I owned in the 24 hours of the Charlotte Roval. He won that almost by himself, but he had an excellent team behind him. He started off that race with a triple stint, and by the end of his stint had a lap and a half lead on the whole field. So look out for him. A special talent, I think, that Seth picked up for the first 12 races and possibly for the full season. Line Power Motorsports, owned by Tom Sears, picked up Brandon Fetterplace, Emma Carter, and Alex Simkowski. Part-time driver Richie Catania. That team, we're going to see. I think that's your dark horse team. Possible sneaks into some playoff spots, but also could be in your middle of the pack runners. But consistency, I think, is going to be key for that team. Prophecy Motorsports, our final team, owned by Tommy Withers, selected Dustin Painter, Joshua Garrison, David Wright, and Thomas Andrews as the part-time driver. There's your rosters for A Squared going into the first 12 races of the season. We had a exhibition race this past week at the Clash at the Coliseum in LA. I'm losing track of my words right now, but we're going to pull that up real quick for you. As A Squared kicked off with their their second time headed out to the Coliseum. And let's see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull up their Nope, not going to be able. So we had the Clash at the Coliseum. It is currently on the ARCS or ABN Network YouTube. You can see the full race replay there. Jeremy Brault took home the Clash win. In style, there was quite a bit of commotion throughout the race, but no different than what we saw in real life at the NASCAR Clash at the Coliseum. Bumpers being used, feelings getting hurt a little bit, but overall a great start to the seasons. with A squared. This is our top division. A squared is going to see a lot of eyes on it, both in the way of roster movement, but also in the way of sponsors, in the way of our streams, which is being handled by ABN this year for all 36 races. And it is an exciting time to be a part of ARCS, especially at the top level, because everyone is going to be gunning for one of those 28 full-time spots. The roster's been set for the first 12 with full-time and part-time, but that leads us to our feeder series of ARCS Ignition. This is brand new to ARCS and kind of brought about by the draft of the by the draft by A squared, and that there were drivers that were kind of left out and not not selected for the different for A squared. And so what you're going to see is here, I'm going to pull up real quick and kind of walk you through what we're looking at for ARCS Ignition as we get ready to go forward. So we're going to pull there it is right there. And we're going to transition over. So you can see here is the Ignition schedule. They lead off with same kind of schedule as Cup, shorter distances, less of the rule packages that you're going to see. They're also going to be in the Xfinity cars. So they start off at Daytona, Auto Club, Vegas, Phoenix, New Atlanta, COTA, Richmond, Bristol Dirt, which is going to be interesting for those Xfinity cars because I don't believe they've been on dirt before. Over to Martinsville, Talladega, Dover, and Darlington to finish out that 12 race first season part for Ignition, and that's where you'll see our shift happen. Here is your current schedule. You can see those that are full and those that are part when it comes to the drivers. You see some of these drivers like Feemster, Wright, Riggs, those Pinnell, Sears, those are all drivers that are full-time over in Cup and the A squared division, so they are going to be able to run 2 races down here in the Ignition, same way you'd think that in real life, like Kyle Busch goes down and runs a few races for his Xfinity or truck teams. So each of these drivers are going to have the opportunity to maybe get a little testing in for the Cup Series, or just have a little fun or help train the drivers that they have signed up for Ignition and look to train as possible full-time or part-time drivers in A squared. We continue on. It's been a great start to the season. SNS is off to a fabulous start from Rockingham. TNT is 4 races in already. A squared had their clash kickoff. Next, they're headed to Daytona for the duels. And each week is going to be bigger and better as we continue on with each of our divisions and our series, both feeder series and official series. It's going to be fun. Find a way to come out and watch us, whether that's through our streams on ABN networks, ABN Racing Networks with Carmen Hardy, or racing with us at racearcs.com, and we'll get you into the different series that you're interested in. Remember, SNS open to everyone. TNT, A squared, invite only or drafted. Ignition open to everyone. ARCS Extreme open to anyone. If you are a dirt head, get out there on Tuesday nights and let's see your best dirt moves. Short track asphalts on Monday, and look out for our special events. If you want to be a part of one of these endurance program teams, we would love to have you. The more the merrier when it comes to growing our endurance program. We're finding all kinds of new drivers throughout, and as you saw on our A squared rosters, there's a bunch of rookies that are in there, and we found some of them through our endurance program, some through our short track programs, but it's going to be an absolute barn burner of a 2023. My name's Matthew Kent. I'm one of the admins here at ARCS, and for everyone at ARCS, and all divisions and series. And for Inside ARCS, it's been an amazing time. We'll see you next time on Inside ARCS.